100 doctors failed to cure the mafia boss's son, but the 15-year-old black medical genius daughter of the janitor cured him instantly. And what happened next? No one would ever forget. "Get out of there, girl. This is no place for a child, doctor." Peterson pushed Kesha away from the door of the VIP room at Mount Sinai Hospital. The gray-haired man in his immaculate lab coat completely blocked the entrance. As if a 15-year-old teenager were a biological threat, inside the room, Tommy Marcelli, only 8 years old, had been dying for 3 weeks. The only son of the feared mob boss, Vincent Marcelli. The boy had defeated all the specialists from 3 continents. Doctors from Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic. They had all failed. The boy was dying, and no one knew why. "My father has worked here for 20 years cleaning these hallways," Kesha replied calmly, holding a stack of medical books to her chest. "And I know every patient on this ward better than most of the interns." Dr. Peterson laughed contemptuously. "Oh, sure. The janitor's little girl is a doctor now. Go back to school, kid. Let the adults do their jobs." What the arrogant doctor didn't know was that Kesha had finished high school at age 13, that she had been reading medical journals since she was 10, that her photographic mind had absorbed more medical knowledge in 5 years than he had learned in decades of a privileged career. But most importantly, Dr. Peterson didn't know that Kesha had been observing Tommy's case for the past 15 days. While he and his elite team were running around in circles, she had identified a pattern that everyone else had overlooked. "The boy doesn't have a rare disease," Kesha muttered almost to herself. "He has thallium poisoning. The symptoms are classic. What did you say?" Dr. Peterson turned abruptly. "Nothing that matters to someone who has already decided that a 15-year-old black girl can't know more than you." At that moment, a nurse rushed out of the room. "Doctor, he's having another seizure. His blood pressure has plummeted." Through the half-open door, Kesha saw Vincent Marcelli, a man who controlled half the city's ports, weeping over the small, frail body of his son. Beside the bed, a dozen doctors bustled about in a panic. Weeks, Kesha thought. 3 weeks of suffering that could have been avoided if someone had had the courage to listen to a girl who doesn't look like them. But what no one in that elite hospital realized was that Kesha hadn't spent the last few days just watching. She had been preparing for this very moment when their arrogance and prejudice would collide with the harsh reality that sometimes genius comes packaged in ways that society prefers to ignore. And now, as the son of one of the most dangerous men in the country slowly died, Kesha knew she had exactly one chance to prove that they had underestimated the wrong person. If you're wondering how a teenager could take on Harvard-trained doctors and save a life they couldn't, don't miss the next chapter of this story. And if you're enjoying this narrative about how prejudice can literally kill, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how Kesha would turn the greatest humiliation of her life into the moment that would change everything forever. Dr. Peterson not only ignored Kesha's words, he made a point of humiliating her publicly. "Security," he shouted down the hall, "get this girl out of here. Children are not allowed in the emergency ward." 2 burly security guards approached, but Kesha remained motionless, her eyes fixed on the door of the room where Tommy was dying. "You're going to let a child die because of pride," she said calmly, her voice echoing through the hallway crowded with doctors and nurses. "What an insolent girl," muttered Dr. Harrison, the most respected pediatric cardiologist on the East Coast. "Someone should teach manners to this person." The word person was uttered as if it were something dirty in his mouth. Kesha knew that tone well. It was the same one she heard when she walked through the halls of the university where she had begun studying medicine at age 14, thanks to a scholarship for gifted students. The same condescending looks from professors who questioned her presence there. The same muffled giggles from classmates who whispered about quotas and racial favoritism. But what none of them knew was that Kesha wasn't there by chance that night. For 2 weeks since Tommy Marcelli had been admitted, she had been meticulously observing every test, every result, every wrong medical decision. While her father, James, cleaned the rooms during the night shift, she studied the medical records left on the tables, memorizing every detail, every overlooked symptom. "My daughter," James had whispered one night, finding her poring over toxicology books in the staff break room. "You can't keep putting yourself at risk like this. If they find out, Dad, a child is dying because these doctors are too arrogant to consider possibilities outside their elitist manuals," Kesha had replied, her eyes shining with a determination that James had recognized since she was a little girl. It was the same determination that made her learn to read at age 3. The same that led her to win national science competitions at age 12. The same that made her wake up at 4 m.y.a. to study before helping her father at work. Now, as the security guards hesitated to touch her, after all, she was the daughter of a respected employee, Vincent Marcelli staggered out of the room. The powerful mob boss looked like he had aged decades in 3 weeks. His eyes red from crying met Kess. "You," he said, his voice. "You said something about poisoning." Dr. Peterson quickly interjected, "Mr. Marcelli, please don't listen to a troubled teenager. She's clearly seeking attention. Our specialists have run every possible test." "Your specialists," Keisha interrupted, her voice cutting through the air like a blade, "tested for over 200 rare diseases, spent $500,000 on experimental tests, but didn't do a simple urine test for heavy metals, because they think poisoning is something that happens in movies. Not to rich families." The silence in the hallway was deafening. Vincent Marcelli walked over to Kesha, completely ignoring the doctors around him. "Keep going. Hair loss in specific patterns, seizures that always start in the extremities, severe abdominal pain that worsens with food but improves with fasting," Kesha listed unhurriedly, "and the most obvious, the blue-gray line on the gums that you all overlooked, because it only appears in thallium poisoning." Dr. Peterson laughed nervously. "Mr. Marcelli, thallium is used in rat poison." "That's absurd." "That's exactly why it's perfect," Kesha cut in. "Who suspects rat poison in a millionaire family? It's practically undetectable if you don't know what to look for. And you," she looked directly at Dr. Peterson, "were too busy protecting your egos to look." Vincent stared into the girl's eyes for a long moment. He saw in them not only intelligence, but a controlled fury. He recognized the fury of someone who had been underestimated their entire life. "Run the test," Vincent told the doctors. "Mr. Marcelli, this is a waste of valuable time." Dr. Peterson began. "Do the test," Vincent roared, and the entire ward fell silent. As the doctors reluctantly headed to the lab, Keisha remained in the hallway, watching the chaos she had created with a few simple words. Her heart was racing, not from fear, but from anticipation, because she knew exactly what that test would reveal, and when it did, all those arrogant doctors would have to swallow not only their pride, but the devastating reality that a cheeky girl had achieved in 15 minutes what they had failed to do in 3 weeks. But what none of them realized was that saving Tommy would be only the first step in something much bigger. Every insult, every look of contempt, every attempt to silence her had been carefully filed away in Keisha's photographic mind, and she was about to turn every humiliation into a lesson that hospital would never forget. For now she would wait, because sometimes the best revenge against arrogance is not violence, it is the truth served in just the right dose, at just the right moment, in front of all the right people. The urine test results arrived in 47 minutes. 47 minutes that completely changed the dynamics of that elite hospital forever. Dr. Peterson held the paper with trembling hands, his eyes rereading the numbers for the 4th time, as if reality could be altered by the force of denial. "Thallium levels 15 times above normal," he muttered, his voice almost inaudible. "Acute thallium poisoning, cause of progressive organ failure." The silence in the hallway was deafening. 12 medical specialists with degrees from universities that cost more than Kesha's house stared at a black teenager who had diagnosed in minutes what they had failed to do in 3 weeks. "Impossible, Doctor," Harrison whispered, snatching the paper from Peterson's hands. "A girl, a child, this can't be right." Vincent Marcelli didn't say a word. He simply walked over to Kesha and knelt in front of her, a gesture that made everyone present hold their breath. The most feared man on the East Coast was on his knees before a teenager. "You saved my son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "How can I repay you?" Kesha looked into the powerful man's eyes and saw not a criminal, but a desperate father. "Let me finish what I started," she replied calmly. "Thallium doesn't appear in the body on its own. Someone is deliberately poisoning Tommy, and I'm going to find out who." Dr. Peterson exploded. "That's enough. A minor cannot investigate anything in this hospital. This is medical and legal territory." "Medical territory." Kesha turned slowly toward him, and for the first time since she had arrived, she smiled. It was not a sweet or shy smile. It was the dangerous smile of someone who was about to completely destroy another person's credibility. "Dr. Peterson, what university did you attend?" "Harvard Medical School," he replied automatically, his chest swelling with pride. "Interesting. And what year did you graduate?" "Why?" Kesha pulled out her cell phone and within seconds was showing the screen to everyone. "Because here on the Harvard Medical School website, in the 1998 toxicology curriculum, thallium is listed as the 3rd most common cause of poisoning in children. First page of the manual, introductory chapter." Dr. Peterson's face flushed various shades of red. "And here," Kesha continued, swiping her finger across the screen, "in the March 2019 Journal of Pediatric Emergency Medicine, an article you co-authored on diagnostic protocols in pediatric emergencies. Page 127, line 15, in cases of progressive neurological symptoms with no apparent cause, always consider heavy metal poisoning, especially thallium." The silence was now deadly. "Then explain to me, Dr. Peterson," Kesha continued, her voice sharp as a blade. How a Harvard graduate who helped write protocols on exactly this type of case did not consider thallium in 3 weeks of treatment. Incompetence or negligence before anyone could respond. James Carter appeared at the end of the hallway pushing a cleaning cart. Seeing his daughter surrounded by all those doctors and the dreaded Vincent Marcelli, his face paled. "Dad," Kesha called calmly, "I need your help." James hesitated, glancing nervously at the doctors who had always treated him like invisible furniture. But something in his daughter's voice, a determination he had known since she was little, made him walk over to them. "What do you need, daughter? You've been cleaning the rooms in this wing for 20 years. You know every corner, every routine, every person who comes and goes. Someone is systematically poisoning Tommy Marcelli. I need you to help me find out who has constant access to his room." James looked at Vincent, who nodded gravely. "Make a list?" Vincent said, "Everyone, doctors, nurses, support staff, visitors, everyone." Dr. Peterson tried to intervene again. "Mr. Marcelli, this is medical protocol, not criminal investigation." Dr. Peterson. Vincent cut him off, his voice low and dangerous. "You just spectacularly failed to diagnose that someone was trying to murder my son. I suggest you shut up before I completely lose my temper." As the doctors withdrew in silent humiliation, Kesha watched each of them carefully. Peterson with his trembling hands, Harrison avoiding eye contact, the head nurse who couldn't stop sweating, but it was Dr. Miranda Walsh, the pediatrician on night duty, who caught her attention. The woman had remained silent throughout the confrontation. But her eyes showed something Kesha recognized immediately. It wasn't shame for the medical failure, it was anger. Anger directed specifically at her dad. Kesha whispered as they walked down the hall. "I need you to do something very important. Over the next few days, keep a close eye on Dr. Walsh. Write down everything she does, everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to. Why her specifically? Because while everyone else was ashamed or confused, she was furious. Not at me for humiliating them. At me for saving Tommy." James stopped walking. In 2 decades of cleaning that hospital, he had learned to read people very well, and now, looking into the determined eyes of his 15-year-old daughter, he realized she wasn't just trying to save a child's life. She was about to expose something much bigger, something that would explain not only who was trying to kill Tommy Marcelli, but why someone inside that elite hospital would have a motive to murder the son of one of the most powerful men in the country. "Kesha," James whispered, "what have you really discovered?" She smiled. But this time it was a smile that combined the innocence of a teenager with the frightening intelligence of a mind that had seen patterns where others saw only coincidences. "Dad, Tommy isn't the first rich kid who's nearly died in this hospital without a clear diagnosis in the last 2 years. And if I'm right about what I suspect, Doctor, Walsh isn't just trying to kill a child." Kesha stopped in front of the window overlooking the VIP parking lot, where luxury cars belonging to powerful families were lined up while their children fought for their lives upstairs. "She's operating a serial killing scheme, specifically targeting heirs of influential families. And now that I know this, she'll try to silence me before I expose everything." The realization hit James like a bolt of lightning. His daughter hadn't just saved a life. She had uncovered a conspiracy that could shake the foundations of American high society. And now a serial killer knew that a 15-year-old girl was on her trail. "What are we going to do?" James asked, his voice heavy with paternal concern. Kesha glanced one last time out the window where Dr. Walsh was walking quickly toward a black car, already talking intensely on the phone. "We'll give her exactly what she expects from a sassy girl. We'll act like irresponsible teenagers who have meddled where they shouldn't have. And when she completely lets her guard down, convinced that we're just kids playing detective," she turned to her father, and James saw in his daughter's eyes the same fierce determination that had led her to teach herself medicine, graduate at age 13, and diagnose what Harvard doctors couldn't. "Then we'll show the whole town that sometimes justice comes packaged in ways that the privileged prefer to ignore, until it's too late to do anything but pay the price." Dr. Miranda Walsh thought she was dealing with a troubled teenager. When Kesha started asking childish questions about other mysterious cases at the hospital, she thought she was in control of the situation when she suggested that the girl focus on her studies instead of playing detective. "Big mistakes, Dad. Did you install the cameras where I asked?" Kesha whispered to James as he cleaned the hallway at 2 Lague M 3 days after her initial discovery. "In the supply closet on the 4th floor and in the medication preparation room," James confirmed, discreetly passing a small recorder to his daughter. "But honey, if she finds out..." "She won't find out until it's too late," Kesha interrupted, checking the device. "Doctor, Walsh thinks she's dealing with a black girl too curious for her own good. She has no idea that I've been documenting her every move for 72 hours. What, Doctor? Walsh also didn't know was that Kesha had hacked into the hospital's internal system using passwords she had observed doctors typing in during years of social invisibility. Nor did she know that Kesha had systematically correlated every sudden death of a wealthy child in the last 2 years with Walsh's night shifts. 7 children, 7 powerful families who had tragically lost their heirs to rare, undiagnosed conditions, all under Dr. Walsh's direct care during the critical episodes. Dr. Walsh, Kesha approached the pediatrician timidly the following afternoon, perfectly playing the role of an impressed teenager. "Can I ask you some questions about medicine? I'm thinking of studying pediatrics when I grow up." Walsh's eyes narrowed slightly, but she forced a condescending smile. "Sure, honey. But maybe you should focus on finishing high school first before dreaming so big. It's just, I'm curious about those rare cases you treat here. Like Tommy. It must be frustrating when children die and you can't figure out why." Walsh paused. "What exactly do you mean?" "Oh, I just read about other similar cases in recent years. Senator Morrison's daughter, Judge Thompson's son." Kesha pretended to consult innocent notes. "They all had similar symptoms before they died. What a strange coincidence, right?" "Doctor," Walsh's face hardened imperceptibly. "Young lady, I suggest you stop asking unnecessary questions and go home. Hospitals are no place for morbid teenage curiosity." "Sure, doctor. Sorry if I said something stupid." Kesha bowed her head submissively, but secretly checked to see if the recorder in her pocket had captured the threatening tone Walsh had just used. That night, Dr. Walsh made her fatal mistake, thinking she had successfully intimidated a sassy girl. She called her contact. "We have a problem," Walsh said into the phone, unaware that Kesha was recording from inside the supply closet. "The janitor's daughter is asking questions about the previous cases." She mentioned specific names. The voice on the other end was cold, calculating. Does she know something, or is she just guessing? Hard to say. She's a smart girl, smarter than she should be. But she's black, poor, a janitor's daughter. No one will believe her over me. Even so, we can't take any chances. The operation is very lucrative. Families pay millions to eliminate troublesome heirs and redirect inheritances. One curious teenager can't destroy years of work." Kesha almost dropped the recorder. Dr. Walsh wasn't just killing children at random. She was being paid by members of the families themselves to murder inconvenient heirs. "What do you suggest?" Walsh asked. "Accident. As always. Accidental drug overdose. Teenagers are known to experiment with drugs. It will be a tragedy, but not a surprise." "Understood. I'll make arrangements." Kesha had everything she needed, not just recorded confessions, but the names of the contractors, methods, financial motivations. But now she had less than 24 hours before Walsh tried to kill her. The next morning, Kesha called an emergency meeting with Vincent Marcelli, Dr. Peterson, and the hospital administration. "I found out who poisoned Tommy," she announced calmly. "And I found out a lot more." When Dr. Walsh entered the conference room, expecting to find a frightened teenager being reprimanded by authorities, she was met with something very different. Vincent Marcelli sat at the head of the table looking deadly serious. 2 corporate lawyers, the hospital's chief administrator, and Kesha Kama sat with a laptop open in front of her. "Dr. Walsh," Kesha said softly, "would you like to hear an interesting recording I made last night?" The color drained from Walsh's face as his own voice filled the room. "Discussing contract killings with clinical precision, that's illegal. Recording without consent," Walsh stammered. "Interestingly," one of the lawyers interrupted, "recordings of criminal activity are admissible when they document conspiracy to murder, especially murder of minors." Vincent leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Walsh with predatory intensity. "You tried to kill my son for money." "It wasn't personal," Walsh whispered, his mask of medical respectability finally slipping. "It was just business the families wanted." "I don't care about your excuses," Vincent cut him off. "I care about justice." He turned to Kesha, and for the first time since they had met, he smiled with genuine admiration. A 15-year-old girl accomplished in 1 week what detectives and federal investigators couldn't do in 2 years. "Kesha Carter, you didn't just save my son. You saved all the children she was still planning to kill." Dr. Walsh tried to get up, but 2 security guards were already blocking the door. Her career, her reputation, her freedom. Everything had been destroyed by a teenager she had underestimated because she saw only skin color and social class, never intelligence or determination. "By the way, Dr. Walsh," Keisha said, closing her laptop with satisfaction. "Those childish questions I asked yesterday, each one was strategically designed to make you incriminate yourself. Because sometimes, the best way to catch a criminal is to let them think they're smarter than their victims." As Walsh was escorted in handcuffs through the corridors where she had operated with impunity for years, one question remained unanswered. How many other Dr. Walshes were there in positions of power, protected by the very arrogance that ultimately caused her downfall? And how many other Keishas were being ignored, their voices silenced before they even had a chance to save lives? 6 months later, Dr. Walsh faced her trial in the pages of national newspapers. Elite doctor convicted of serial murder splashed across the headlines, while she in an orange prison uniform wept before cameras that had once treated her like a medical celebrity. 7 millionaire families were publicly exposed for hiring people to murder their own children. Senators resigned, judges were arrested. A scandal that shook the foundations of American high society. All because a black teenager had the courage to ask questions that Harvard doctors chose to ignore. Kesha Carter, 16, received a full scholarship to Harvard Medical School today, becoming the youngest person ever accepted into the program, announced the national news anchor. The young woman who saved Tommy Marcelli and exposed a murder ring has also established a foundation for gifted children from low-income families. Vincent Marcelli kept his word. The Carter Foundation now operated in 5 states, offering free medical education to bright young people whom the traditional system ignored. James Carter had been promoted to hospital operations supervisor with a salary that allowed him to buy his own home for the first time in his life. Dr. Peterson. He lost his medical license and worked as a pharmaceutical representative, explaining to anyone who would listen how an inexperienced girl had destroyed his career. No one had the patience for his whining. "You know what impresses me the most?" Vincent said to Kesha during a visit to the hospital where she now worked as a junior consultant. "You could have come to me at any time asking for revenge against those who humiliated you, but you chose to build something greater." Kesha smiled, watching Tommy play in the playground that had been built in the pediatric ward. The boy was healthy, strong, alive because she had chosen to act instead of accepting being silenced. The best revenge against people who try to diminish you is not to destroy them, Keisha reflected. It's to prove them completely wrong about who you really are. Dr. Walsh was serving a life sentence, his reputation destroyed, his degrees revoked. But Kesha rarely thought about her. She was too busy saving lives and changing a system that almost allowed a child to die because arrogant adults refused to listen to an intelligent teenager. Today, hospitals across the country implement protocols that require consideration of poisoning in undiagnosed cases. The Carter Protocol has saved hundreds of lives in recent months. "Sometimes justice doesn't fall from the sky," Kesha said during her high school graduation speech at age 16 to an audience that included Vincent Marcelli, her proud father, and Tommy in the front row. "Sometimes you have to be brave enough to take it into your own hands and smart enough to use it in a way that changes the world." The teenager that Harvard doctors tried to silence now had her own chair reserved at the same university. Dr. Walsh tried to kill children for money, but ended up creating the person who would revolutionize pediatric medicine forever. And Tommy Marcelli, he grew up strong and healthy, always remembering Dr. Kesha, who proved that sometimes heroes come in forms that society prefers to ignore until it's too late to do anything but applaud. Kesha's true revenge was not to destroy those who underestimated her. It was to become so extraordinary that they spent the rest of their lives explaining how they missed the chance to recognize her genius. If this story of courage and overcoming adversity has touched you, don't forget to subscribe.